It is evening in Luiren. The sky outside has turned the color of ripe plums. Fireflies rise from the tall grass in slow spirals, blinking like forgotten thoughts. A breeze carries the scent of lavender and wood smoke, curling through orchard lanes and across stone paths worn smooth by generations of bare feet. Inside, the burrow glows. Not brightly. Not all at once. The light here is layered, gold from the hearth, amber from lanterns tucked into shelves, a soft spill of blue moonlight through a window round as a biscuit. The home is small by outside measure, but full in the way only true homes are. A pie cools on the sill, its crust blistered just right. Quilts lie folded over the arms of low chairs. A child's boots, still muddy, rest near a straw broom, forgotten in the joy of something urgent and joyful, perhaps a story just begun, or a cup of cider too warm to resist. There are voices here, low, rhythmic, telling tales without hurry. A woman recalls the day she chased a fox from the cabbage patch, only to discover it had been stealing vegetables for a litter of kits tucked into the roots of her own garden wall. A boy laughs with a missing tooth. An elder hums a tune so old it seems to have no beginning. There is no rush, no danger, only rhythm. The ticking of a kitchen clock shaped like a sunflower. The soft thump of dough being kneaded on an oiled board. The long, slow hush of tea poured into clay mugs, their rims worn smooth by familiar lips. This is not a place of quests or kingdoms. This is a place of returning. To yourself. To silence. To a memory you don't remember making, but which waits here, in every rounded doorway and fire-warmed spoon. You feel it now. The weight in your limbs easing. The pace of your breath finding something ancient, something quiet. You have stepped out of the wider world, into a story told not with swords, but with soft hands and second breakfasts. Beneath the hill, the fire is lit. The bread has risen. And the tale begins. Luiren, the halfling homeland, is not a land that sings its name with thunder. It hums instead softly, like warm wind through barley fields, or the bubbling hush of a shallow stream over pebbled earth. Nestled along the southeastern coast of Faerun, between the dense jungles of the Chultan Peninsula and the broader land of Dambrath, Luiren is a place both overlooked and unforgettable, to those who pause long enough to see it. The geography of Luiren is gentle by design, as if the land itself conspired to befriend its small, untroubled people. Rolling hills dominate the heartland, dotted with sycamores and shaded oaks. Wildflowers, not soldiers, line the meandering paths. And beneath those hills, like secrets stitched into the soil, lie the halfling burrows, round-doored, moss-roofed, and humming with life. Though the halflings of Luiren have seen wars, seen invaders and exile and fire upon their fields, the land remembers peace. The land always invites return. To walk in Luiren is to be reminded that adventure does not always gallop in armor. Sometimes it arrives with a watering can in hand, a fresh-baked scone wrapped in linen. The air here is fragrant with lavender, thyme, and sweet clover. Bees drift lazily from blossom to blossom. Children chase ribbons of wind, not monsters. And the soil beneath your feet? Soft, loamy kind. The towns, Chethel, Belur, and Crenadin among them, are marked not by height but by harmony. Each village appears as though the earth simply folded upward, giving its children a cradle of grass and stone. There are no great towers here, no opulent palaces. Yet there is wealth beyond coin, shelves bowed under pickled preserves, pantries lined with dried herbs and root vegetables, looms dressed in cheerful threads, and fires that never forget their duty to warm. Though the halflings have known exile, as when the powerful Immerse once drove them from their ancestral land, they returned. Centuries later, with quiet patience, they reclaimed Luiren and restored its rhythms. Not with vengeance, but with planting hands, kneading hands, storytelling hands. There is wisdom in the land, passed down not in proclamations, but in whispered recipes and garden patterns. In Luiren, history lives in embroidery and kitchen smoke, in sun-warmed benches and old dogs sleeping on stoops. You walk past one such burrow now. A hand-carved sign hangs gently from a hook. Tansy green bottle, herbalist and pie maker. Through the round window, you glimpse a large clay mixing bowl on a wooden counter, its interior dusted with flour, and a child perched on a stool, giggling as she shapes dough into lumpy stars. The light in Luiren is never harsh. Even on the brightest days, it seems filtered through kindness. At night, lanterns glow from burrow windows like constellations scattered across the hillside. If you listen closely, you might hear singing, a lullaby, perhaps, or a recipe recited like a poem. This is Luiren. And it does not roar. It simply welcomes. Let us step inside a halfling burrow. The round door creaks ever so slightly as you push it open. It is not locked. Halflings rarely need locks among their own. Trust is the mortar in these hills, as vital as stone. The scent that greets you is warm and familiar, yeast rising, firewood smoldering, something sweet, perhaps pears stewing in wine and clove. You step into a hallway whose walls curve gently with the hill, lined with wooden pegs where shawls hang, still fragrant with garden wind. The floor is stone, but softened with braided rugs and sun-faded hues. A low shelf beside the door holds shoes of every size, from the worn clogs of an old grandmother to the scuffed boots of a daring niece home from a fruit-picking errand. Every object has a story here. That rocking chair by the hearth? Hand-carved 3 generations ago. The woolen throw draped across its arm? Spun from sheep raised just outside Belur. The kettle, eternally ready? It bears the nicks of harvest celebrations and rainy mornings alike. In the kitchen, the true heart of every halfling home, life unfolds in rituals so soft they might be mistaken for spells. The wooden spoon, worn smooth from decades of stirring, rests in a stoneware crock. Flour dust coats the countertop in a light bloom. A bowl of brown eggs sits beside a chipped jar of honey. The butter bell gleams under its cool ceramic dome. A halfling baker, stout and cheerful, hums as she measures nutmeg with the precision of a scholar and the love of a grandmother. She does not rush. No one in Luiren bakes in haste. Baking is communion, a gift to neighbors, a memory for children, a remedy for grief. Each act is thoughtful. The dough is patted, not punched. The pies are vented with care, little spirals or hearts carved into their golden lids. The cooling rack is a sacred space, a gallery of comfort. And then comes the storytelling. As night falls, halflings gather around their hearths, or in neighborly circles beneath the moon. They speak not of conquest or crowns, but of love found at a harvest dance, of a potato so large it fed 12 kin and a traveling bard, of a ghost in the root cellar who just wanted a sip of elderberry wine. Stories are not always truthful, but always true in the way that matters most. You cradle a teacup in your palms, its rim chipped, its warmth perfect. The fire crackles low, its amber glow painting soft shadows across the room. A cousin begins a tale about a fox who learned to write poetry. No one interrupts, not even the children. Everyone listens, because here, stories are stitched into the fabric of sleep. Some say the halflings of Luiren lack ambition. But ambition, here, is measured differently. It is ambition to raise plum trees that bear sweeter fruit than last season. It is ambition to memorize all the old tales before the teller's voice fades. It is ambition to be kind, to remember names, to leave behind laughter. And so the burrows hum. With bread rising, stories growing, and lives lived slow but full. This is halfling life. Not grand, but good. The kitchen is the soul of a halfling burrow, not merely a place of sustenance, but of stories, rituals, and legacy. In Luiren, to cook is to remember, to share, and to love. You begin to understand this not with your mind, but with your senses. The warmth, first, soft and enveloping. The thick, steady heat of the wood-fired oven in the corner, whose bricks were laid by hand, one at a time, by the matron of the house in her younger years. The scent of its masonry still holds whispers of cinnamon from winters long past. Then, the light, dappled and golden. It filters through rounded windows dressed in lace, cascading over countertops carved from chestnut wood worn smooth by generations of use. On the sills, tiny jars of dried chamomile and sweet marjoram catch the sunlight like stained glass. A small bowl of polished stone sits beside them, placed there not for function, but because a child once thought them beautiful. You hear the low clatter of pottery, the soft thud of a pestle and mortar, and the rhythmic rustle of a worn apron as the cook moves. No dances between tasks. In halfling homes, a kitchen is a stage, and the cook is both conductor and caretaker, creating harmony from scent, texture, and taste. In one corner, yeast is rising beneath a damp cloth, its gentle puff suggesting the patience of time itself. Nearby, a copper pot simmers over coals, exhaling the sweet steam of plum wine reduced with honey and star anise. And above it all, above the bubbling and baking and breathing, hang bundles of dried herbs, rosemary, thyme, lavender, sage strung up with twine and blessed with memory. Halflings measure not in teaspoons but in stories. A recipe might read, "Add nutmeg as Nan did, with 2 laughs and a wink," or "Stir until it feels like a midsummer breeze." A pie crust, if done right, should crackle just enough to wake a sleeping cat. And perhaps that is the greatest secret. Halfling food is not just consumed, but lived. Take, for instance, the art of jam making. Each village has its variation, each family its pride. Some prefer the sharp tang of rhubarb sweetened with wild honey, others the mellow comfort of pear and vanilla. But no jam is complete without the ritual, the sunrise harvest, the sing-song peeling of skins, the careful skimming of foam from bubbling fruit, and finally, oh finally, the sealed jar turned upside down on a cool windowsill, left to whisper to itself as it settles into sweetness. The jam cupboard is sacred. It is not uncommon to find jars wrapped in linen, labeled with inked scrollwork and tiny pressed flowers. Some are given as courtship gifts. Others are opened on the birthdays of those long past, their taste a soft, edible memory. Then there are the pies. There are stories told of Beluir's Great Pie Festival, held once every 10 years under the turning leaves of autumn. Bakers from every hamlet bring forth their proudest creations, savory root pies with rosemary crusts, apple tarts with caramel glazes and lattice tops woven like shawls, berry medleys infused with summer sun and a touch of elderflower liqueur. The judging is not harsh, nor is it final. For in Luiren, no pie is ever truly best, only best remembered. Even the youngest halflings learn to bake, their tiny fingers pressing dough into tins, their cheeks dusted with flour, their eyes wide with purpose. These first pies, often misshapen and overly sweet, are treasured beyond measure. They are not corrected. They are not laughed at. They are placed beside the others, honored with love and second helpings. Meals in halfling homes are not bound by time. Breakfast may extend until second breakfast, which flows gently into elevenses. Luncheon might become a wandering affair, with nibbles from garden to pantry, and dinner often transforms into an evening-long feast if guests happen by. But it is supper that holds the most magic. As twilight deepens and the hearth is stoked, families gather. Cousins, neighbors, wandering minstrels, all are welcome. The table groans beneath its offerings, golden loaves split open to reveal steaming crumb. Roasted mushrooms basted in garlic butter glaze, pickled vegetables in tiny jars like jewel-toned offerings, and stews so thick and rich they shimmer under spoonlight. There is no silence, only a tapestry of sound, murmurs, laughter, the clink of serving spoons, and the occasional tale shouted over a jug of cider. And after the meal, always tea, served in mismatched cups, passed down from great aunts and kindly uncles. Halfling tea is more than a drink. It is a ceremony of return. The teapot, stout and hand-painted, is warmed with boiling water before loose leaves are added, chamomile for peace, peppermint for clarity, lavender for sleep. A curl of steam dances toward the rafters as the first cup is poured. Guests do not leave without tea, nor without a hand pie for the road, nor without a hug, a story, and perhaps a knitted scarf someone just happened to finish that afternoon. Even in solitude, halflings eat with ceremony. A bachelor might lay out his place with as much care as a feast, folding his napkin just so, whispering to himself the same grace his mother once said before every meal. A widow might brew her late husband's favorite blend and sip it as she watches the wind stir the hedges he once trimmed. Food is remembrance. Food is family. Food is faith in tomorrow. There is no spell more powerful in Luiren than the aroma of freshly baked bread drifting across the hills at dusk. It carries with it the memory of hands, the echo of laughter, and the promise that warmth still lives, and always will, beneath the hill. You close your eyes now, perhaps imagining yourself seated at such a table. The cushion beneath you soft, the plate before you full. The candle flickers low, and someone begins a tale. You do not need to know its end. You are already home. In Luiren, time does not march. It strolls. It hums low, like the song of a distant brook, winding between mossy stones and under arched tree roots. Time here is not a tyrant or a taskmaster. It is a companion, sometimes quiet, sometimes playful, always patient. The halflings of Luiren do not worship time, nor do they fear it. They live with it, the way one lives with old furniture or a faithful pet. It is present in every ritual, every meal, every season, but never rushed, never wrangled. The day begins not with an alarm, but with the slow blooming of dawn through round-paned windows. Curtains stir gently in the breeze, carrying the scent of dew and earth. Somewhere nearby, a kettle begins to whistle, and a sparrow hops across the stone path outside, pecking at scattered crumbs left out with purpose. Morning in a halfling village is a symphony of small, sacred acts. Bread dough is kneaded while the sun warms the eastern hills. Bees are greeted by name as they emerge from hives nestled between apple trees. A young girl sweeps the front step with a broom passed down from her grandmother, each bristle worn soft with use. No hour is wasted, but neither is any hour bound by obligation. Tasks are performed with care, not urgency. A farmer plants each seed with a quiet word. A tailor takes time to trace each seam with chalk, humming the same lullaby his mother once sang as she sewed quilts through the winter. Even the youngest children learn that rhythm matters more than speed, and that joy is often hidden in repetition. Meals serve as the hands of the halfling clock. First breakfast, with its buttered toast and soft-boiled eggs. Then second breakfast, often taken in the garden with tea and honey cakes. 11's a spring spiced buns and soft cheese. Luncheon might involve a stroll to the neighboring burrow, a chat, and perhaps the trading of jam jars. Afternoon tea offers the respite of cool lemonade or warm cider, depending on the season. Supper follows the arc of the sun's descent. And later still, under the hush of stars, midnight snacks wait quietly in pantries, tucked beside firelight and old tales. But it is the seasons that most shape halfling life. Spring arrives not in a rush of blooms, but in a slow greening of the hills, snowmelt trickles into creeks, and crocuses emerge shyly from beneath stone walls. Burrows are open to the breeze, linens shaken out, floors scrubbed with lemon oil. Gardens are turned over, seeds blessed with hopeful fingers, and festivals bloom like dandelions. Spring is a season of returning. Long-lost cousins appear on the doorstep with muddy boots and pie offerings. Old lovers meet again beneath blossoming cherry trees. Songs once forgotten are hummed anew. Then comes summer, with its long golden hours and sticky sweet fruits. Children run barefoot through the orchards, cheeks stained with mulberries. Elderly halflings doze in rocking chairs under the shade, their snores mingling with bee song. The pace quickens slightly, just slightly, as days stretch wide and warm. There are games played on village greens, picnics by the riverside, and nightly dances beneath lanterns strung between tree branches. The air is filled with the scent of clover and wood smoke, and laughter weaves itself through everything like thread. Autumn is the crown jewel of halfling time. Harvest festivals transform the land into a patchwork of amber, rust, and gold. Every burrow smells of baked apples, roasting squash, and warm wool. There are contests: biggest pumpkin, crunchiest pickle, most colorful quilt, and they are always judged with laughter, never pride. Cider flows freely, and music rises from fiddles tuned generations ago. Folk tales are told in hushed circles, stories of old heroes who tamed storms with kindness, or clever widows who outwitted trolls by pretending to be bakers. Every tale ends in a toast, a tear, or a toast to the tear. Autumn is when time slows again, when harvests are tucked away and eyes turn inward. And then, quietly, winter arrives. Burrows draw inward like clasped hands. Chimneys puff contentedly. The world becomes smaller, not poorer, more intimate. Meals are longer. Books are read aloud. Candles burn low beside baskets of mending. Outside, the snow piles softly against round doors, muffling the sounds of the world. But the silence is not loneliness. It is memory. Each snowflake reminds the halflings of winters past, of a grandmother's thick wool socks, of stolen kisses beneath mistletoe, of long games of dominoes that lasted until dawn. There are hardships in winter, yes. Some burrows go without. Illness may knock at the door. Old age may settle its weight more firmly on once nimble shoulders. But Luiren endures through care. Neighbors become kin. Those with more give freely. A hot pie may appear unannounced. A young halfling may show up each morning to fetch wood for an elder who no longer hears the axe's song. Even time itself seems to offer mercy here. Grief is not hurried, nor is joy overfed. Everything is given its due, its breath, its pause. Weddings are celebrated across many days. The rituals are gentle, a shared loaf of bread, a weaving of hands and yarn dyed with herbs chosen for meaning. There is no grand pronouncement, only the warmth of those gathered, the scent of rosemary in the air, and the deep, lasting look between the betrothed, who have likely known each other since infancy. Funerals, too, are soft. There are no wails, no black veils. Just lanterns floated down the river, each carrying a story whispered to the night. Songs are sung in harmony. Recipes are passed down in the name of the departed. A chair is kept empty, but never cold. The living remember. Not just the deeds, but the laugh, the preferred jam, the way they always tap the edge of the teacup twice before sipping. Time does not erase in Luiren. It layers. It builds upon itself like sediment, each season a stone in a path that circles back upon itself, again and again, gently worn but never broken. And so the halflings live. Not apart from time, but within it. Not against change, but alongside it. A quilt of days. A song of seasons. A clock that ticks not in urgency, but in grace. Perhaps you feel it now, the slow turning of something old and kind within you. The weight of years that do not crush but cradle. The softness of a life lived not in grand triumphs, but in the quiet mastery of moments. In Luiren, they say the best days are not the ones you remember, but the ones you return to in dreams. And as your eyes grow heavier, and the embers in the hearth glow steady and warm, you wonder if perhaps, just perhaps, this is one of those days. There are no borders drawn in Luiren, no high walls or grand gates to define a town from its neighbor, or a stranger from a friend. There is only the quiet weaving of lives, a pattern made from handshakes, shared flour, and the memory of your mother's laugh echoed in another's voice. Halfling society is not built on laws, though it has them, nor on hierarchy, though some elders carry more weight than others. It is built instead on something older, softer, and less easily named. Let us call it the thread. Every halfling knows it, though few would speak of it plainly. It is the thing that binds the woman who gathers eggs each dawn to the boy who builds birdhouses beside the well. It links the orchard keeper who lost his wife in spring to the seamstress who brings him plum preserves each Tuesday, unasked. It ties strangers to hosts, and hosts to the land. You might think, at first glance, that halflings are insular. They seldom travel far. Their homes are half buried and their fences low. Their stories are inward-facing, passed from grandparent to child like well-worn mittens. But this is not fear. This is not withdrawal. This is belonging. To belong, in halfling terms, is not merely to live in a place. It is to become a note in its song. To remember who planted the ash tree at the edge of the lane, and why. To know the sound of your neighbor's knock without needing to ask. To carry not just your own stories, but the stories of others, as gently and as often as bread is passed at supper. Children learn this early. Their games, though filled with laughter, are rituals of kindness. One teaches another how to wrap pastry without tearing it. Another braids clover stems into a crown for a friend too shy to ask. Arguments are rare, but when they come, as they must, they are met not with silence but with pie and apology, often delivered together in the same small basket, still warm. In Luiren, gifts are rarely wrapped. They are slipped into coat pockets when no one is looking, left on windowsills with no name but clear intent. Shared in ways that expect nothing in return, not because halflings are saints, but because they know, deep down, that every kindness finds its way back eventually, like rain to the river. There is no halfling word for charity, only neighboring. Even the design of a burrow reflects this communal instinct. Rooms are rarely locked. Pantry shelves often extend into shared space between homes, where one family's surplus preserves may be traded without ledger or complaint. Kitchens spill into gardens, gardens into paths, paths into town greens where impromptu meals stretch on well past dusk. And when someone builds a new home, everyone helps. Not because they are asked, but because they were children once, and remember the scent of freshly dug soil and the feel of that first threshold under their bare feet. A new burrow is an event, not of construction, but of welcome. Quilts are gifted. Tools are loaned. Advice is offered and ignored in equal measure, with good cheer and stronger cider. Even outsiders, should they find their way to Luiren's soft hills, are greeted not with suspicion but curiosity. Who are you? Where have you been? What stories do you carry in your pockets? If you stay long enough, if you bake, and weed, and share your tale beside the fire, your name may be stitched into a quilt of shared memory. Not loudly, not publicly, but there, all the same, waiting to warm someone else years from now, when your face has faded but your recipe for spice cakes lives on. There are festivals, of course. Oh, how halflings love a festival. The calendar of Luiren is dotted with them, each season bearing its own excuse to gather and feast, to sing and retell the tales that have already been told too many times, and yet never enough. There is candle blush in early spring, where lanterns are painted with wishes and released into the dusk. There is mid-song in summer, when picnics cover the hills like patchwork and children attempt to lasso clouds with twine and hope. There is the binding leaf in autumn, when families share the names of ancestors with children coming of age, gifting them a story to wear like a second surname. And there is hearth rest in winter, quietest of all, where each burrow lights a single candle and places it in the snow, letting its light speak for all the warmth they carry inside. And yet, it is not the festivals that define the halflings. It is the in-between. The cup of tea brought without being asked. The garden gate repaired in silence. The nod across the marketplace. The memory of a friend's laugh, stirred into the soup on a lonely evening. Halflings are not untouched by grief. Death still knocks. Misfortune still stumbles. Betrayal, rare though it is, still wounds. But when the worst comes, they turn not inward, but toward each other. There are stories, quiet ones, of burrows rebuilt after fire by neighbors who said nothing but worked until the job was done. Of old quarrels forgotten when illness struck. Of feasts held for the heartbroken, where no one asked questions, but everyone brought bread. And there are cruel stories too, of halflings who left and never returned. Of love betrayed. Of secrets kept too long. But even these stories are carried with care. Not erased. Not forgiven too quickly. But held like fragile things, told around the hearth in hushed tones, so that the pain may be remembered and softened, not ignored. The halfling heart is not naive. It knows that some wounds do not mend, that some songs end without reprise, that even in a land of warmth and pie, shadows still gather at the edge of dusk. But the halfling answer is not to armor the soul. It is to offer a seat at the table, an extra slice, a tale that begins not with "once upon a time," but with "you remember old Tamsin, don't you?" And so the thread continues, woven through generations, through laughter and sorrow, through shared recipes and silent forgiveness, through the echo of footsteps on stone paths, long after the walker has gone. It wraps around you now, as you rest in this imagined burrow, warm and welcome. The air smells of apples and firewood. A distant voice hums a lullaby. The hearth flickers. The night is long, and you are not alone, for you too belong here. Not because of your blood, not because of your name, but because you've listened. And that, in Luiren, is how every home begins. In Luiren, there are no great libraries, no soaring spires of marble and parchment, no magical tomes bound in dragonhide, no secret vaults buried beneath candlelit towers. And yet, there is knowledge here. Great, gentle, sacred knowledge. Not stored, but shared. Not locked, but lived. Halflings keep memory the way they keep gardens, patiently, tenderly, and with their hands in the soil of the everyday. A story in Luiren is not just something told. It is something kept. It lives in the steam curling off a bowl of soup on a cold evening, in the embroidery along the edge of an apron worn thin with years, in the way a child mimics their grandfather's walk, right down to the hands tucked behind the back and the low humming. Memory is art. And art, among halflings, is never for display alone, it is always for use. Let us begin with stitching. In every burrow, you will find quilts, folded across beds, draped over hearths, rolled and tucked in baskets beside the fire for guests who've dozed off with their tea still in hand. They are bright things, patched from hundreds of fabrics, scraps of old dresses, curtain remnants, the hem of a robe once worn by a beloved elder. Each patch tells a tale, and each quilt is a chapter. One may carry the story of a wedding, its center sewn with rings of golden silk from the ceremony, its corners embroidered with the names of those who danced until dawn. Another may hold sorrow, muted tones, careful stitches. A red thread that runs corner to corner, symbolizing a child lost too soon, remembered each night beneath its gentle weight. There are artists among halflings. To be sure, painters, sculptors, calligraphers, but their work rarely hangs on walls. Instead, it is passed from hand to hand, worn into tools, carved into breadboards, etched into the handles of soup ladles. A walking stick may bear the story of every village its bearer has visited, each notch a friend made, each swirl a hill climbed. A pie tin may be engraved with tiny symbols along its edge, each one denoting a different family member who once tasted its contents, murmured a blessing, or asked for seconds. And then, of course, there is storytelling itself. Halflings are born with it in their breath. Their lullabies are stories. Their prayers are stories. Even their recipes, passed from palm to palm, come with tales of how the sugar spilled one day and changed everything for the better. Storytelling is not reserved for formal occasions. It unfolds at breakfast tables, in garden rows, beside berry baskets. Children are encouraged not just to listen, but to retell, embellishing, inventing, laughing as they change a rabbit into a lion, a mud puddle into a bottomless chasm. There is an art to it, to be sure. A pause in the right place. A raised eyebrow. A long, slow sip of tea before delivering the punchline. These things are taught not in schools, but in kitchens. Not from books, but by watching the elders, their rhythm, their warmth, their way of holding attention like a ball of twine they never drop. Some stories are so old they have no known author. Like, the scone that ended the war. Or, the ghost who forgot her name but remembered her spice mix. These are passed on with variations, each teller adding their own spice, their own moral. The truth matters less than the feeling, the lesson, the warmth it leaves behind. Memory craft, they call it. A halfling bard may carry no instrument, but instead walk with a satchel of objects, a bent fork, a broken comb, a stone shaped like a heart. Each item holds a tale, waiting for the moment it will be needed, to comfort a grieving friend, to make a child laugh, to remind someone that once they were brave. And when a halfling passes on, their memories are not buried. They are scattered, gently, lovingly, into the lives around them. A grandson might take up the habit of humming while mending socks. A niece might wear the same shade of blue every spring, because that was Aunt Melba's favorite color. A neighbor might quote an old friend's wisdom in the middle of a recipe. Never fear a cracked crust, it lets the goodness show through. Even the land remembers. A bench beneath a willow, carved with initials now faded. A weathered stone at the edge of the path, painted each year anew by children who do not know why, only that it must be done. There are cruel stories, too. Stories of love lost, of betrayal, of years where the rain didn't come and the burrows grew cold. These are not erased. They are softened with time, like stones in a stream. They are told in low voices beside late fires. They are not hidden from children, but neither are they dressed in pain. They are framed in lessons, in empathy, in quiet strength. Because to remember suffering is not to give it power. It is to place it on the shelf beside joy and say, "You are part of me, too." Some halflings carry grief like a seed, planting it in their craft. A baker whose partner died too young may only ever bake one kind of bread, again and again. But each loaf, though simple, tastes of devotion, of sorrow kneaded into love. An artist may carve spoons in silence, each one identical, each one a prayer that someday, someone will stir stew with it and feel less alone. Art does not heal, not fully. But it speaks. And in Luiren, the land listens. There are hills where lullabies seem to linger, and glades where laughter returns like an echo. Stones that warm strangely beneath your hand. Trees that lean just slightly toward each other, as if in conversation. No one claims magic is involved, but no one denies it either. Because in Luiren, memory itself is a kind of enchantment, woven not through spellbooks, but through stories, stitches, and the long, slow patience of living. You sit now in such a place. A burrow where the walls hold more stories than books ever could. There's a sketch above the hearth, drawn in charcoal, of a dancing badger who wears spectacles. No one remembers who first drew it, but everyone agrees it should never be cleaned off. A teacup nearby has a crack, sealed with silver. A child once insisted it was lucky. And so it is. The quilt over your knees smells of lavender. Its patches are faded but strong. Someone is telling a story nearby. You do not need to know the beginning or the end. You only need to listen and feel the thread gently winding around you, holding you here. Where you belong. Where you always have. Where every breath is part of the tale. There is a truth in Luiren known to all halflings, though few ever say it aloud. The garden sees all. Not as a god sees. Not as a ruler watches from a throne. But as a grandmother watches from her rocking chair on the porch, quiet, knowing, endlessly patient. Every halfling garden is an autobiography. You could read it if you knew how. The placement of each herb, the spacing of stones, the careful curve of the bean trellis, all speak of who lives here and how they love. No two gardens are the same. Some wrap their burrows in wildness, a riot of color and chaos, where bees flit from hollyhock to hyssop and children hide beneath canopies of squash leaves. Others are clipped and calm, planted in spirals or tidy lines, their soil weeded every morning before tea. And all of them hum. Not with noise, but with presence. You feel it as you kneel to touch the thyme. As you lift the leaves of basil and find a ladybug nestled there, asleep beneath a veil of dew. As you sink your hands into the loam and feel the pulse of the land like breathe beneath your palms. Halflings do not garden because they must. They garden because they remember. Because the scent of mint brings back a summer when laughter rang through the grass like wind chimes. Because a tomato warmed by sun tastes like the kiss of someone long gone. Because every root pulled from the earth is a reminder that what lies buried can still nourish, still return. The work is never rushed. Halflings rise with the sun not to conquer their to-do lists, but to greet the soil with reverence. Boots are slipped on, aprons tied. Tools are gathered, not gleaming weapons of efficiency, but worn companions, their wooden handles darkened by years of honest use. There is no shame in talking to plants. In fact, it's encouraged. The tulips bloom better if you compliment them. The peas prefer lullabies. And the old apple tree at the edge of the garden? It remembers your name, even if it cannot say it. Gardening is not just about food, though there is plenty of that. Rows of carrots, their orange shoulders peeking from the earth like bashful dancers. Vines heavy with grapes that split if you press them too hard. Potatoes, squat and sturdy, sleeping beneath the surface, waiting for the cool hands of dusk harvest. But these things are not hoarded. A halfling garden feeds more than one burrow. It feeds neighbors. It feeds travelers. It feeds festivals and morning tables, and that child down the lane who has decided she only eats green beans this week and nothing else. It also feeds the soul. Ask a halfling why their gardens thrive, and they will not point to their compost, though it is rich. They will not cite the phases of the moon, though they honor them. They will say, "Because I don't grow food. I grow moments. Moments like this. The stillness of a late afternoon when the only sound is the turning of soil and the occasional, lazy buzz of a wasp. The sweetness of a raspberry, popped into your mouth without thought, its juice sticky on your fingers. The laughter of a friend as they accidentally uproot a leek the size of a child's leg and insist it must be some ancient forest spirit in disguise. The ache in your knees after hours of weeding, soothed by a basin of warm water and a cup of thyme tea placed quietly beside you by someone who saw and cared. In Luiren, gardens are also grown for memory. There is the widow's garden in Shethel, tended for over 70 years by different women who've lost their loves. Each year, they plant something that bloomed on the day they met. It is not a place of sadness, but of soft resilience, of perfumes that carry the names of the departed. There's the garden of the lost cook, named not for someone deceased, but for a baker who once wandered off, seeking the perfect mushroom, and returned only 3 years later with a beard full of moss and a recipe for truffle honey biscuits. The garden is a chaotic wonderland of fungi and laughter. And there is the invisible garden, so called because it is never planted in the same place twice. It springs up wherever someone is grieving. Quiet volunteers arrive at dawn, plant lilies, sweetgrass, and feverfew, and vanish. When the family steps outside, the world is just kinder. Children in Luiren are taught the garden before they are taught letters. They learn which flowers follow the sun, which herbs make sleep easier, which bugs to befriend, and which thorns mean touch gently. They plant radishes not to eat them, but to watch them swell, like secrets. Elders are often found sitting among their crops, not working, just being, listening, remembering. Because in Luiren, tending the land is not merely an act of cultivation. It is an act of witnessing. The land has seen wars. It has seen halflings exiled and returned. It has seen joy and ruin, kindness and cruelty. And still it allows itself to be turned, year after year, by hands that ask permission first. There are tales of gardens that would not grow, not until a quarrel was mended. Of vines that curled toward lovers seated too far apart. Of flowers that refused to open until an old apology was whispered among them. Whether these tales are true, none can say. But they are believed. Because in Luiren, the soil is not silent. It listens. It remembers. It forgives. And you, now, sit within such a garden. The stone beneath you is warm from the day. The wind rustles the dill and fennel. Somewhere nearby, a gate creaks open and shuts again, gently. No urgency. Only presence. You reach for a sprig of mint. Its leaves brush your fingertips. You breathe in. The scent carries you back, not to any one moment, but to all moments like this. Soft. Still. Sacred. The garden does not ask for anything from you. Only that you be here. That you breathe. That you, too, take root in this quiet place where everything grows with love. In Luiren, the calendar is not measured by moons or tides alone. It is measured by joy. By flower on cheeks and cider in mugs. By lanterns strung between old trees, and songs rising like smoke into the starlit dark. In halfling lands, the turning of the year is marked not by war or harvest quotas, but by the weight and warmth of shared moments. And oh, how they love a festival! They come as surely as the seasons, these celebrations, not grand or extravagant, but rich and layered, like a slow-simmered stew that grows sweeter with each year's retelling. Each village keeps its own customs, of course. Yet there are threads that bind them all, threads of laughter, of remembrance, of gentle mischief and solemn love. The first festival of the year, when the snow still sleeps in patches beneath hedgerows, is Candle Blush. It begins not with a trumpet or a drum, but with a match. At dusk, each burrow lights a small candle in a jar. The flame is carried carefully, by children in thick mittens, to the village green. There, the jars are arranged in spirals, stars, or whatever pattern the children decide upon that year. No one corrects them. Each flame represents a wish. Some are whispered aloud. Others are kept secret, tucked deep within the breast. A candle might be lit for a new love, a safe journey, a longed-for child, or simply for peace in the marrow of the bones. As night falls, the field glows like a constellation brought to earth. Old songs are sung, not loudly, but close, voice to voice. Sweet dumplings are served in paper wrappers, dusted with sugar, and eaten in silence beside the candles. No fireworks. No speeches. Just light, and hope, and the hush of winter beginning to loosen its grip. Next comes Gingerroot Week, somewhere between late first planting and the first buzz of bees. There is no set date. Villages simply wake one morning and know. The air smells of thawing soil. Birds sing differently. And someone, usually a child, shouts, "It's Gingerroot season!" and the whole village erupts. It is not an official festival, and that is the point. Gingerroot Week is improvisation. Games are invented on the spot. Songs are shouted instead of sung. Pies are made from whatever's left in the pantry. And of course, ginger features in everything: candied, pickled, spiced, grated into lemonade, baked into crusts. Tradition says that anyone who eats 7 different ginger dishes in one day will fall in love before the next moon. Or perhaps just fall asleep. Either way, it's a fine week. Mid-song is the jewel of summer. It begins with silence. At dawn, every household places a flower on their doorstep. No one speaks for the first hour of light, not even the dogs. It is a sacred hush, a listening, a welcoming of the sun. Then the singing begins. Mid-song is not a concert. It is a cascade. Anyone may begin. A tune hummed while hanging laundry becomes a verse, then a chorus, then a full street echoing with harmony. No one leads. No one needs to. Food is carried in baskets to the village green. Tables appear, seemingly from nowhere. Folk who haven't danced in decades find their toes tapping. Elders sway, arm in arm. Babies are passed from lap to lap, collecting kisses like blessings. There are contests, though no one wins. Tallest sunflower, sweetest jam, most beautiful lie told as a poem. One year, a quiet weaver from Chethill claimed she once spun a blanket from cloud and starlight. The villagers nodded solemnly and gave her a basket of scones. The magic of mid-song is not in the volume. It is in the permission. To be loud or soft. To cry into a friend's shoulder or laugh until cider spurts from your nose. To remember that time is a gift, and you are allowed to spend it in joy. Autumn brings the binding leaf, a quieter, deeper celebration. It honors legacy, not of conquest or glory, but of roots. During binding, halflings share stories of their family line, not in boast, but in gratitude. Quilts are unfolded. Old songs are sung, voices cracking on the high notes. Names are carved into wooden plaques and hung with care. But binding is not only about the past. It is also for the newly grown. Children who come of age during binding are invited to choose a symbol, a leaf, a stone, a bird call, and place it beside their family name. This symbol becomes theirs, stitched into collars, carved into walking sticks, added to recipes. It is their first public choosing, a way to say, "This is who I am becoming." There is a bittersweetness to binding. Elders often weep. Sometimes the story ends with a pause so long, the fire crackles in the silence like a reply. But the tears are not sorrow. They are richness. Proof that the threads hold fast. And then comes hearth rest. The final festival of the year. The quiet one. The deep one. On the longest night, every burrow darkens its hearth. For 1 hour, the fire is allowed to rest. Lanterns are extinguished. Tea grows tepid. The world listens to its own breath. Then, slowly, one by one, the fires are relit, not from matches, but from a shared flame. The village keeps one central lantern burning through the night. From it, embers are carried in clay dishes, passed door to door. This fire, they say, is the year's memory. By the time it returns to the hearth, the home has changed. Cleaned, reordered, opened. Families speak softly. They share dreams for the year ahead. Sometimes regrets. Sometimes forgiveness. And when the fire is lit again, it is not just warmth. It is welcome. The next morning, each household bakes a single loaf of bread and gives it away. No keeping. No selling. It must go to someone unexpected, a traveler, a quiet neighbor, a rival. Because hearth rest teaches this, that light must be carried, not hoarded. And so the festivals continue year after year. Their purpose is not novelty, not escape, but remembrance. A reminder that even in the smallest life, there are seasons. That joy must be cultivated like carrots or trust. That love is built not in grand gestures, but in laughter shared beside a plum tart, in stories retold over cider, in the sacred hush before a song begins. You sit now in such a moment. A candle flickers on the table. Someone has brought a basket of warm rolls. Outside, children chase fireflies, their laughter like bells over water. A voice begins to sing, not loudly, just enough. The song doesn't need words. You already know them. You hum along. And the hills, quiet and green and old, hum with you. To understand a halfling is to step into their home. Not glance at it from a garden gate, not admire the brickwork or the symmetry of their fence, but to cross the threshold. To feel the hush of cool stone after summer heat. To smell old cedar and bake things. To brush your hand against the doorframe and feel it curve, not in error, but in memory, worn smooth by touch. Halflings do not simply live in houses. They become them. Their burrows are more than shelter. They are language. A living alphabet of texture, scent, light, and space. Every room whispers its own name, its own purpose, its own history. The whole of it, walls, windows, pantry shelves, is a kind of slow, steady autobiography. Begin with the door. Always round. Always centered. Always carved, not with ostentation, but with intention. A small curling vine. A songbird. A set of initials that have blurred with age and weather but are never forgotten. Some doors are painted in warm greens or faded red. Others are left bare, allowed to silver with time like the heads of the elders who pass beneath them. You do not knock on a halfling's door with fear. You knock with curiosity. And if the knock is answered with a pause, that pause is only to put the kettle on. Step inside. The air is cool and still, the way stone keeps secrets. The light is low and gold, filtered through linen curtains that sway in the breeze. Shoes are left at the threshold, not by rule, but by instinct. The floor is smooth beneath your feet, polished slate or dark wood that clicks softly as you walk. The hallway curves. Always. Straight lines are rare in burrows, as if the halfling heart itself cannot abide them. Corners are softened. Angles are dulled. Shelves bow under the weight of crockery and stories. There are no two burrows alike, but they all share this, a kind of enfolding. Not confinement, comfort. To be in a halfling home is to feel held. The walls are thick, muffling sound, insulating warmth. The ceilings are low enough to feel intimate, never oppressive. Every object has a home, teapots with chipped spouts. Wooden spoons darkened from decades of stew. Cushions with hand-stitched seams, some unraveling slightly at the corners. The kitchen is, invariably, the heart. Here you find not a showroom, but a life mid-motion. A rolling pin dusted with flour beside a bowl of just picked berries. A recipe scrawled on the back of a seed packet, magnet to the icebox. Copper pans that hang above the hearth, catching firelight and memory. There is always a kettle. Always. Some households keep it simmering all day, the water gently breathing steam from dawn to dusk. Others heat it upon arrival, its whistle an invitation, not just to drink, but to pause. There are no fancy machines, but ingenious little comforts, spice drawers with dozens of tiny labeled tins, jars of lentils and rice arranged by hue, a teacup turned upside down to keep spiders from curling up inside while you sleep. Many burrows are multi-generational. There might be 3 generations beneath one hill, a grandmother who hasn't left the root cellar in years, a couple in the prime of baking contests, and a toddler who refuses to wear anything but socks on their hands. All coexist in rhythm, in kindness, in ritual. Bedrooms are tucked deep, where earth cools the summer heat and muffles the world's louder dreams. Beds are low and wide, piled with quilts of questionable age and unquestionable softness. Above each, something personal, a feather collection, a faded photograph, a shelf of books with one volume always missing, read again and again, and never returned to its place because its place is beside you. And then, there is the pantry. To call it a storage room is to misunderstand its holiness. The pantry is a temple. Rows upon rows of preserves, cordials in green glass, braids of garlic, loaves wrapped in linen, dried apples, strange pickled things whose origins are long forgotten but whose labels say things like, "That day at the river," or "Elsie's surprise." A guest might be offered a tour of the pantry the way one might be shown a gallery of oil paintings. And rightly so. For here is pride. Here is effort. Here is the heartbeat of the burrow seasons, bottled and stacked. Some burrows have attics. Others root cellars. Many have small nooks where one can sit alone, with a book and a cookie, and be gently ignored for as long as needed. And all burrows have something inexplicable. A door that leads nowhere. A squeaky stair that sings a different note on rainy days. A cupboard that only holds aprons, though no one remembers putting them there. These are not flaws. They are the home's personality. Its charm. Its refusal to be merely functional. Because halfling architecture is not about control. It is about communion. With the earth, first, each burrow built with respect for the hill, for the tree roots, for the slope of water during storm. Halflings do not cut into the land. They nestle within it, like a child in a mother's arms. With the past, second, homes are inherited, yes, but also remembered. A new floorboard may be laid by a cousin, but it will always be referred to as Maudie's plank. A new coat of paint may brighten the kitchen, but that one spot, right there, still bears the faint shape of gravy from a legendary meal in 1326 Doctor. And with each other, always. No halfling builds alone. Burrows rise from community hands, dug together, carved together, filled with laughter and dough and the occasional argument over chimney angles. When someone dies, their room is not sealed off. It is transformed. Perhaps into a study, or a craft room, or a nursery, but always with something left, an embroidered pillow, a favorite mug, a stone from their travels placed carefully on the windowsill. To forget a person would be unthinkable. Their presence lingers in floorboards and firelight, in the slight creak of the pantry door, in the way someone still sets an extra plate, just in case. You rest now in such a burrow. The armchair holds you like an old friend. The wood crackles. The window shows nothing but the gentle slope of evening, and perhaps the outline of a friend approaching, carrying something fragrant beneath a cloth. You do not need to speak. You do not need to rise. This is not a place that requires performance, only presence. The home breathes around you. The walls remember. The hearth watches. And somewhere deep in the stone, 1,000 quiet stories curl in the warmth, waiting to be heard again. Even in Luiren, shadows fall. The land of halflings is rich in warmth, in stories, in the buttery light of windows seen from hilltops after dark. But no place, no matter how peaceful, is untouched by the shape of fear. Halflings, wise as they are in comfort and kindness, do not pretend that danger does not exist. They simply prepare for it gently. Not with walls, with ritual. Let us begin at the edge. Beyond the garden rows and orchards, beyond the root cellars and beehives, the land grows quiet. Not silent, never that, but different. There is a hush to the trees that border halfling settlements. They do not crowd, nor leer, but they watch. It is in these borderlands that children are taught their first real lesson about the world. The unknown is not always cruel, but it is not always kind. No child in Luiren is forbidden to explore, but they are taught to leave signs behind, bundles of mint on fence posts, pebbles in a specific pattern, little driftwood totems strung with bells and thistle. These are not magical in the arcane sense, but powerful in their way. Halflings believe in intent, in the resonance of care, of observance, of preparation. When a young one sets out into the wider wild, they carry 3 things: a packet of salt, a length of red string, and a tale. The tale must be one they know by heart, one they can recite if lost or afraid. For in halfling thought, memory is a compass, and story is the thread that always winds home. There are creatures in the woods, to be sure. Foxes, who are not always foxes. A singing brook that never dries, even in drought, but whispers names and languages no halfling speaks. A thicket near Chet Hell where no bird has nested in 100 years. The locals call it the Mending Hollow, but none will say why. Only that if you enter weeping, you return calm, and if you enter singing, you forget the words. But none of these are spoken of with dread. They are respected. Fear, for halflings, is not meant to rule. It is meant to guide. Old superstitions remain. Not out of ignorance, but out of recognition that the world is larger than any one village, any one hearth. Some doors are closed 3 times before bed. Not locked, just tapped shut with an old chant that ends, always, in a hum. Some families leave a saucer of milk on the windowsill every full moon, for the little seldoms, the small, strange ones who never arrive, but who are thanked just the same. Bread is never thrown out. If stale, it is crumbled for birds, or soaked for stew. Waste is watched not because of poverty, but because of debt. Halflings believe that comfort, once earned, owes its own tithe to those who might go without. Even in celebration, caution lingers like spice beneath sweetness. At mid-song, a string of garlic is always hung beneath the biggest table. For those who cannot feast, but still arrive. At candle blush, 1 candle is left unlit until dawn. No one may touch it, no one may ask. It is the absent flame, and it is said to represent the thing that might have come, but didn't. Some say these are just traditions, but others recall crueler stories, older stories, of times before the return to Luiren, when halflings were driven from their land by the sorcerers of a massacre, forced to scatter like chaff on wind, of camps under stars, of winters without burrows, of songs sung to keep children still while strangers passed close in the night. These wounds do not bleed, but they do not vanish, and the halfling way is not to erase. It is to fold in, to make even fear a kind of companion. A warning bell rung gently. A hand that touches your shoulder at dusk and says, "Light the lantern now." Some families still pass down charms made from broken spoon handles, worn smooth and strung with string. These are holdfasts. They are not sold. They are gifted, quietly, in times of grief or long journeys. To receive one is not a sign of weakness, but of worth. Someone believes you are worth keeping safe. You will not find halfling warriors in armor often, but you will find wardens. They walk the borders in pairs, always pairs, carrying lanterns and long walking sticks with silver bands. Their job is not to fight, but to notice. A fence disturbed. A track too large, too deep. A sudden silence in the brambles. They rarely speak of what they see. But when they return, and mark a chalk symbol on the village board, just a leaf, or a spiral, or a knot, the people understand. And they adjust. Gates are reinforced. Children walk home in pairs. A different path is taken to market. No panic. No fear. Just care. Because for all its gentleness, Luiren understands a hard truth. Peace is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of dedication. Even in burrows where laughter echoes and soup simmers, there is always room for silence. For looking out the window longer than needed. For double-checking the latch. For leaving a light on, even when no one says why. This is not paranoia. This is love made daily. It is also healing. For many halflings, particularly the eldest, danger is not a story, it is memory. The exile of Luiren lives still in the wrinkles around their eyes. Some remember the trek back home when the Immerse fell. Some remember cousins who did not return. They do not speak of it loudly, but they build it into everything. Into songs that seem joyful but always end on a minor chord. Into certain vegetables that are planted every year, though no one eats them, only because they grew well during the lean times. Into the act of weaving 3 extra scarves every hearth rest, for anyone who arrives without one. Kindness, to a halfling, is never naive. It is earned. It is chosen, again and again, like a door opened each morning not because danger is forgotten, but because life is worth living anyway. And so now, as you sit near a window, the night beyond dark but not unkind, you understand. The lantern glows softly. There is a bell hung beside the threshold that rings not in alarm, but in presence. The wind rustles. A branch scratches the roof. But you are not afraid. You are aware. And the burrow, as always, watches over you, its walls thick with memory, its hearth warm with the will to endure. Sleep comes slowly, gently, but it comes like a friend returning after a long walk through the dusk. Because even in a world of light, the shadows are part of the story. And you are not alone in the telling. In the hills of Luiren, children do not grow up all at once. They do not shed their innocence like skins in the night. They are not hurried, not pushed forward by time as though it were a river they must chase. Instead, they bloom, slowly, curiously, gently, like dandelions in spring sun. There is no rush. There is only arrival. To be a halfling child is to belong, utterly and without question. From the moment one's first cry echoes off the curved ceiling of a burrow, they are woven into the fabric of the home like a cherished thread. No one asks who will they become, not yet. That question is saved for another time. What matters now is that they are. That they are loved. That they are here. A halfling child's first gift is always handmade. A doll sewn from scraps. A wooden spoon carved by an elder's hand. A pair of socks dyed with onion skin, too big by several years, but destined to fit one day. These are not keepsakes, but tools, anchors, items that will follow them from cradle to garden to kitchen to field. And so begins the slow journey. In early childhood, days stretch long and golden. Much of the time is spent outside, chasing butterflies, rolling down hills, floating leaf boats in creeks, climbing the same tree again and again just to greet a familiar knot in the bark. Nature is both classroom and playground. A child learns first not their letters, but their seasons. They learn the sound of rain on summer apples, the way frost lingers longer on mint than on sage, the weight of an earthworm in the palm, the tickle of beetle legs as they scurry to darkness. Every sensation is a lesson. Every mud-streaked tunic is a certificate of curiosity. There is no punishment for mess. A child who tracks footprints through the kitchen earns not scolding, but a towel and a story about the time Uncle Peppo brought in an entire hedgehog by accident. Children are not feared here. They are not managed. They are mirrored. If they cry, someone sits beside them, not always with answers, but with presence. If they shout, someone listens, not to shush, but to understand the shape of the storm within them. Discipline exists, but not as punishment. It is correction through care. A broken jar is mourned, but not scolded. The child is helped to sweep the shards, to bandage a finger if needed, and to bake something new to replace what was lost. Everything breaks sometimes, an elder will say. But that doesn't mean it ends. Everything is a chance to try again. And through it all, storytelling. Tales are told not just at bedtime, but in kitchens, in gardens, at bath time, while braiding hair or mending socks. Stories about foolish ducks, clever mice, and burrows that sprouted legs and walked away. Fables with hidden lessons. Jokes wrapped around wisdom like jam inside a bun. Children do not learn morality from rules. They learn it from rhythm. From the way hands are always offered. From the way guests are always fed. From the way the community sings when someone is lost, even if they are angry. Especially then. Halfling childhood extends longer than in most races. At age 10, a child is still a child, encouraged to explore, to play, to try it and see. Only in their mid-teens do they begin choosing a craft, a direction, a rhythm that suits their heartbeat. And even then, choice is not fixed. A baker's apprentice may become a potter. A gardener might wander for a year, return, and take up weaving instead. The halflings of Luiren understand that identity is not born in a flash. It is cooked like soup, slowly, with herbs added over time, with seasoning learned through mistakes. Education here is not formal. It happens in layers. A child learns numbers by selling muffins at the morning stall. They learn measurement from flour and jam. They learn astronomy not from maps, but from lying on their backs in fields while an elder points out stars with a lazy finger and a mug of cider. Letters come later, scrawled on recipe cards and riddles left by prankster aunts. Each child is assigned, unofficially, a gentle elder, someone outside their immediate family who takes on the role of question catcher. This adult is there for the hard things, the scary things, the "why do people go away?" and "will the sun forget us one day?" The answers are always honest, but always kind, because children deserve truth, and truth, if served with warmth, never wounds. Coming of age is marked not by test or trial, but by recognition. A quiet dinner. A small badge carved from wood, its symbol chosen by the youth, perhaps a fern frond, or a teacup, or a rising sun. This badge is worn not to boast, but to remind. It says, "I have started to carry myself." But no halfling is ever truly alone. Even the most independent youth knows the weight of hands beneath them, ready to catch, to guide, to hug, to nudge back home with a wink and a plate of scones. Even mischief is welcomed, within reason. Some children dye the well water green one summer. Another trio builds an elaborate pulley system to sneak pies from windowsills, only to find their grandmother waiting at the end of the rope, 2 mugs of cider, and a second pie already plated. Because here, trouble is not crushed. It is transformed. Mischief becomes memory. Error becomes growth. The child becomes the teller of tales they once heard. You sit now beside one such child. They are curled beneath a patchwork quilt, their cheeks rosy with dreams, their hands sticky with jam from a late-night snack snuck past a snoring uncle. The window is cracked, just a little. Crickets sing. The smell of lavender drifts in. Their breath is slow, steady, and you realize something. You do not need to remember your own childhood to feel this warmth. You need only to witness it, to carry it gently, to believe, as halflings do, that the world can still be kind enough for wonder, still safe enough for play, still deep enough for stories told in low voices, long after the candle's gone out. Sleep now, the child dreams, and so do you. In the realm of Luiren, the wind is not just a thing that moves the leaves. It is known. It is greeted, thanked, remembered. The halflings do not speak to nature in grand incantations or bardic verse, but in 1,000 quiet ways that only deep familiarity allows. They live with the land, not upon it. They do not take, at least, not without offering something back. Nature, to a halfling, is not something separate. It is kin. Begin with the sky. They watch it daily. Not for fear of storms, but for meaning. A pale haze at dawn might mean the laundry will dry slow. A certain hush in the birdsong could mean the fox has changed dens. A specific kind of cloud, round at the base and streaked at the top, is said to carry messages between widows who still speak to their beloveds in dreams. They do not chart the heavens like wizards, but they remember patterns. Elders might recall a summer when the swallows returned early, and how that year the cherries ripened in grief. These are not superstitions. They are layers. Nature is a language halflings learn by heart, not by logic. Every plant has a name, and every name has a story. Some true in the halfling way. That is, they carry wisdom, not fact. The tall blue flower that grows near the creek, called widow's laugh, because its petals curl at the ends like the crinkle of smiling eyes. Said to only bloom where someone once waited, faithfully, for another to return. Its roots are steeped in tea for sleeplessness, or heartbreak, sometimes both. Mushrooms are treated with near religious reverence. There are dozens of kinds, some edible, some deadly, some used only in small pinches during the binding leaf ceremonies. A halfling will never pick a mushroom without whispering thanks, and never the first of the cluster. The first is for the forest, they say. Children are taught to forage before they are taught to read. A woven basket in one hand, a small knife in the other, a song on their lips to keep them company. They learn not just which berries to gather, but how to gather them well. Never strip a bush. Leave some for the birds. Always press the leaves back as you found them. If you disturb a beetle, apologize. Not as a performance, as a promise. Animals are not pets, in the way some think of them. They are neighbors. There are the usual cats, of course, proud and plump, often found snoozing in flower bins or staring judgmentally at visitors from atop shelves. Some households swear their cats can predict the weather. Others say they understand recipes. Dogs, too, have their place, not as guards, but as companions. Many halflings believe a good dog can recognize sorrow better than a doctor. It is common for a grieving widow or widower to find a shaggy mutt sitting on their stoop within a day of loss, having come unbidden and stayed unasked. Birds are more than song. They are watchers. A particular pair of robins nesting outside the window may be cause for celebration or silence. They are believed to mirror the household's emotions. If they vanish suddenly, it may mean someone is hiding something that needs speaking aloud. And then, there are the others. The unspoken ones. Creatures glimpsed at twilight, taller than rabbits, quieter than deer. Their tracks vanish before they reach the road. Their eyes sometimes appear, reflecting gold in the hedge when no torch is near. No one speaks ill of them. Indeed, many leave gifts. Tiny wreaths made of corn husk, a crust of bread left at the fork in the path, a child's drawing pin to a tree. It is not about belief. It is about relationship. The forest gives. The forest watches. The forest keeps secrets. So too do the rivers. Halflings do not dam their streams or force their creeks into neat canals. Instead, paths are built to curve beside water, never across it. Stones are laid not to block, but to hum. A good stream sings over the stepping rocks in a different tune each season. There are legends, too, of water spirits who take the form of old ants, of will-o'-the-wisps that try to guide only those with unfinished stories, of a creature said to live beneath the lake outside Luiren, who shows itself only when a person has truly, deeply forgiven someone. Whether real or not, no one dares to fish in that lake without speaking a name aloud first. Farming is practiced widely, but never with cruelty. Animals raised for food are treated with gratitude and poetry. A piglet is named. A cow is spoken to as if she were a cousin. A rooster might be trained to knock on the kitchen window when the tea is ready. The halfling butcher is not feared or avoided. He is usually the kindest person in the village. He sings as he works, thanks each creature with soft words, and leaves clover in the fields for the foxes. Every harvest ends with a feast, not for pride, but for balance. One does not simply take from the land. One must return celebration, laughter, song. Even the compost heaps are tended with love. Nothing is wasted, they say. Not even the peel of a sorrowful apple. Wilderness, to a halfling, is not wild. It is intimate. A mossy patch beneath a certain oak is known to ease headaches. A hollow in a cliffside echoes best if you sing only lullabies. A patch of nettles grows every year outside a certain burrow, and though painful to touch, the family leaves it be, believing it guards their dreams. You sit now at the edge of one such place. The wild meets the tended in a slow conversation. Fireflies blink like punctuation in the dusk. The breeze carries the smell of rosemary and loam. Somewhere, a fox yips, not far, but not too near. Your bare feet rest on soil that remembers. The ground hums. Not loudly. Just enough to let you know it's listening. And you, in this moment, are part of something ancient. Something kind. Something alive. You do not need to speak. Only to breathe. To sit. To let the land carry you towards sleep, as gently as a stream carries a fallen leaf. Not away, but inward. Even in Luiren, where the hills bloom and the ovens are always warm, the rain must fall. The laughter of halflings is legendary, light, rolling, infectious. It fills burrows and meadows, turning even a burnt pie into a comedy. But beneath that laughter lies a depth as old as the land itself. A depth made of grief, shaped by loss, and carried not with fear, but with care. Halflings do not shy from sorrow. They do not hush it. They make room for it. There are no funeral pyres in Luiren. No towering tombs. No priests in robes chanting words whose meanings were lost long ago. Instead, there is a kettle. A long table. A silence that stretches like a soft rug beneath tired feet. When someone dies, the first thing their loved ones do is bake. Not out of denial, but because the oven is the oldest comfort. The scent of cinnamon and bread becomes a lullaby for the souls shivering. Neighbors arrive slowly. They do not knock loudly. They bring food, yes, but also small objects, a flower from the path where the departed liked to walk, a ribbon that matches the scarf they always wore, a drawing made by a child who barely knew them, but still remembers their voice. No one says, "Don't cry." Tears are seen as gifts, water for the roots of memory. Elders gather the children and tell a version of the departed's life, not grand, not scrubbed clean, but true. They mention the silly mistakes, the bad haircut, the time they dropped a jar of pickles in front of the mayor and laughed until they wept. The children giggle, and the grief folds itself gently around the warmth, like a quilt. Later, the night meal is served. It is not a feast. It is a soft collection of the lost one's favorite things: pepper jam, mushroom tarts, that strange soup no one ever liked but always pretended to. Their plate is set. Their chair remains. After the meal, a lantern is lit and placed in the window, not to guide the spirit. Halflings do not fear ghosts, but to tell the night, we remember. The next day, the memory basket is opened. Every halfling keeps one. It is not hidden. It is not dramatic. Just a simple woven basket, placed on a high shelf or beneath the bed. Inside, bits of who they were. A note. A button. A scrap of cloth. A rock shaped like a heart. These are passed on, to family, to friends, to those who knew, or wished they had known. Some items are shared. Others are buried. Not in graves, but in places. A stone tucked beneath the elder tree. A shell hidden at the edge of the river. A thimble placed in the hollow of a wall where they once fell asleep reading. Halflings believe the land remembers better than stone. There are no tombstones in most villages. Instead, they leave growing things. An apple sapling. A patch of time. A rosebush so stubborn it blooms even in frost. And if the grief is too heavy, there is the listening room. Almost every village has one. It is unmarked. Usually the back room of a baker's shop, or the attic of a friend. It is quiet, low-lit, filled with cushions. You may enter alone or with company. No one speaks unless you begin. And if you weep there, a hand may simply reach out and hold yours. No questions. No advice. Only presence. Mourning in halfling culture is not linear. It curves, loops, returns. It hides in the scent of a stew or the sound of laughter too much like theirs. It is expected. Respected. Some wear black for a week. Others add a splash of the departed's favorite color to every outfit for a year. Some say nothing for a long time, only to tell a joke one day that feels like coming home. And when anniversaries arrive, they are not grim. They are echoes. Cakes are baked with their favorite spice. A song is sung that they used to butcher but loved anyway. Their name is said aloud at the dinner table, not with reverence, but with joy. Because to forget is not kindness. To forget is a kind of second death. Halflings do not fear ghosts. They believe they are made of memory, and as long as memory is tended, no one truly vanishes. There is a saying in Luiren: "The wind smells of those we miss." And it does. You sit now near the hearth of someone long gone. Their chair remains. Not untouched, used gently. Their mug is still in the cupboard, chipped and loved. Their scarf is now worn by a child who never met them but insists it keeps them safe. The rain taps at the window. A pie cools on the sill. And the sorrow that lives here does not ache. It rocks. It breathes. It holds the room like the low hum of a cello. Not gone. Not loud. Just present. There is peace in this kind of grief. There is space. You close your eyes, not in pain, but in remembrance. The name floats across your thoughts. Soft. Complete. and the world, gentle and old, holds you in return. In Luiren, love rarely arrives with thunder. It does not gallop on white horses or announce itself with fireworks. There are no dramatic declarations shouted across canyons or sweeping embraces beneath falling stars. Love here is quiet. It settles. It weaves itself slowly into the everyday until it is inseparable from routine. The way you always pour their tea before your own, or how their favorite mug finds its way to the front of the shelf without you noticing. The way you sigh in the same rhythm when watching the rain. For halflings, love is not a single fire. It is many candles, lit one by one over time, until the whole burrow glows. The beginnings vary. Sometimes it's childhood friends who grow slowly into something more, as familiar glances become something softer. Sometimes it's the baker and the traveling potter who return each season and leave behind a new dish, and eventually, a promise. Sometimes it's late love, a widow and a farmer who share cider after a long frost and find warmth where neither thought they'd feel it again. There are no elaborate courtships in halfling lands, but there are rituals. Small, sacred ones. A shared recipe. A joint garden plot. A patch on the quilt with both your symbols stitched in the same square. These are the signs a halfling is choosing. Not claiming. Not conquering. But offering. Gifts are never grand. They are precise. A whittled button shaped like your favorite fruit. A story embroidered into a kerchief. A pie where the crust bears the symbol you drew in the dirt when you were 10. When love is declared, it is rarely done in public. More often, it is said with hands dusted in flour and a quiet, "Would you like to stay for supper again tomorrow?" And if the answer is yes, it is sealed not with a kiss, but with a nod and a second slice of pie. Weddings are as varied as the couples who share them. Some are large affairs on village greens, with dancing and laughter and cider that flows until the sun forgets to rise. Others are held beneath favorite trees, witnessed only by birds, bees, and an elder holding a book of blessings tied with twine. There is no set script, but there is always a moment where hands are joined with yarn. Not rope. Not gold. Yarn soft, strong, and perfect. Each partner brings a thread. They tie them together into a simple knot, and wear the ends on their wrists for the next week, letting the yarn fray naturally with time. The knot remains. The strands fall away. A symbol, halflings say, of how love changes, but holds. Love, in halfling culture, is not only romantic. There are bondings, ceremonies between friends, siblings, and chosen kin. They take place when two souls declare, "I walk with you." No hierarchy. No need for matching rings. Just a simple table set for two and a vow to bring each other soup when the world grows heavy. Families form in many ways. Two gardeners who grow together into age. A widowed cook who adopts 3 nieces and a goat. 3 old friends who build adjoining burrows and share the same pantry for 50 years. Blood is respected, but choice is revered. To choose someone, day after day, through harvest and frost, is a kind of magic. Children, when they come, are welcomed without question. They are not mine or yours, but ours. Even the village participates, offering baskets of toys and tiny socks and a great many unsolicited opinions about diaper techniques. Some halflings raise children alone, others in clusters. Still others not at all, content with books, gardens, and the company of neighbors who know how they take their tea. Love is not judged by shape or size. 2 halflings, a halfling and a gnome. 3 partners who braid each other's hair by moonlight. 1 who chooses solitude and still has a dozen godchildren. All are valid. All are celebrated. Because love, halflings believe, is not about fitting into someone else's story. It is about writing one together. Arguments happen, of course. Two people cannot share a kitchen for 30 years without a few flower wars and slammed cabinets. But halflings have a tradition. If an argument lasts past sundown, each party must bake a hand pie for the other before bed. No one is forced to eat it, but most do. And the act of holding something warm and golden and full of apples often softens even the deepest frown. There are also partings. Not all love endures. Some pairs drift apart, not from cruelty, but from change. When this happens, they hold the unbinding. Not a divorce. A ceremony of gratitude. Each partner brings one item they've shared, a quilt, a recipe, a map, and gives the other half. They thank each other aloud, even if voices tremble. They share a final dance, even if it's just swaying in place. Then they walk separate paths. But they remain part of the village, and part of each other's stories. There is no shame, only space. Because halflings know, to have loved is never wasted. And when love is lost, through death or distance, there is carrying, wearing their scarf, planting their favorite flower, saying their sayings aloud, even if no one else understands. Because grief, too, is a kind of love. You sit now across from someone who knows you. You do not need to speak. The fire crackles. The teacups are chipped, but matching. You reach across the table, not for their hand, but to refill their mug. And they smile at you as though you've just written them a poem. There are no grand gestures here. Just warmth. Just presence. Just love, steeped and poured and handed across the space between two beating hearts. And in this moment, beneath the hill, with the wind soft against the round window, you know, this is enough. This is home. In Luiren, age is not a burden. It is not something to be denied, died over, or spoken of in hushed apology. It is not hidden in distant homes or shrouded in awkward silence. Age here is worn. Like a favorite sweater, patched, yes, and a little stretched at the cuffs, but softer than anything new. Halflings revere their elders not because they are rare, but because they are necessary. Their presence is the slow rhythm of continuity, the heartbeat that holds a village steady while seasons shift and children grow. The oldest halfling in any burrow is rarely the loudest, but they are always the one others glance toward, mid-conversation, as if checking the weather. Their opinion is not law. It is context. They do not interrupt, but when they finally speak, whether with a parable, a chuckle, or a single raised eyebrow, whole rooms are just like a tree leaning into wind. Elders are not always sweet. Some are sharp-tongued, or impossibly stubborn, or in the habit of stealing cookies meant for guests. But they are held, by memory, by kindness, by history. Their flaws are part of their shape, like worn steps in stone. Most burrows house at least one grandparent figure, by blood or by choice. These elders do not retire in the traditional sense. They simply change pace. A former baker becomes the family's morning storyteller. A carpenter hands off her tools and takes up embroidery, not for skill, but because she likes the feel of thread. An old potter no longer throws clay, but sits in the workshop and watches, his silence guiding as much as his hands once did. Children gravitate to them, not just because they know the best stories or always seem to have hard candies in their pockets, but because their time is unhurried. Their listening is whole. When an elder says, "Tell me everything," they mean everything. Lessons, in halfling culture, are not scheduled. They are lived. How to knead dough so it rises even when the day is cold. How to mend a sock without making it scratchy. How to wait for someone who isn't ready to talk, just long enough, and no more. Elders teach the rituals, not the written ones, but the ones passed down breath to breath. How to whisper a name to the river. How to find the first crocus of spring and thank it for returning. How to read grief in a neighbor's eyes and bring soup, not questions. Some halflings become elders at 40, others at 90. It has nothing to do with numbers, and everything to do with presence. There is a moment, a quiet internal blooming, when a halfling shifts from gathering the world to holding it. When they begin to pass things down. Not just objects, but weightless things. Songs, expressions, recipes with no measurements. The way to braid hair that keeps it from blowing apart in high wind. And most importantly, the silence in which someone else may speak. Burials are rare in halfling culture. So are pyres. Most elders leave behind instructions, not for grandeur, but for continuity. My walking stick should go to Rin. Put my spoon in the garden. Tell Joe that the scone recipe only works if you laugh while folding in the butter. Instead of monuments, they leave stories. Instead of heirs, they leave friends. There is a ceremony called the circle passing. It happens after an elder dies, usually within a week. The community gathers in the space where that halfling spent the most time, the garden, the porch, the seat beneath the window. And they speak their name. Once. Together. Then silence. Then stories. Not just praise. Not just virtue. But wholeness. She once threw a rolling pin at a raccoon. It stole her apricots. He fell asleep during the mayor's speech every year. She never remembered my name, but she always remembered my favorite jam. And then, one by one, they placed something in that space. A stone. A scrap of cloth. A joke written on a folded note. The site becomes a living memorial, not sealed, but open. Not marked for mourning, but for return. Children are taught to visit these places. Not to cry, but to sit. To ask questions aloud, and wait. To leave offerings not of wealth, but of attention. And over time, as moss grows and seasons pass, the space does not become less. It becomes layered. A chair once sat there. Now only light. But somehow you still feel them. Because halflings do not believe in disappearance. They believe in continuance. In shaping the world so gently, so consistently, that even after you are gone, your hands remain in the way the tablecloth is folded. Your voice echoes in the phrase someone uses to describe the sky. Your story lingers in the space between laughter and pie. You sit now in such a space. The armchair is empty, but not hollow. The blanket across the back is faded, but still warm. Someone hums in the kitchen. The same tune they hummed. You are not alone. Not because others are near, but because you carry them. Their memory in your fingers. Their gentleness in your breath. Their courage in the way you rise tomorrow and choose kindness again. And again. And again. Sleep now, dear listener. The ancestors are near. And they are proud. The world is wide. There are places where mountains crack the sky and oceans pull ships into legend. There are lands of fire and frost, of stone towers and shadows too vast for names. Magic churns in distant realms, where gods contend and dragons stir in sleep. But here, beneath the hill, in the round hush of a burrow warmed by time, there is peace. Not the peace of stillness, or the silence of endings, but the peace of presence, of wood that creaks just so beneath your step, of teacups set gently beside folded hands, of a pie cooling on the sill, its crust flaked with love. This is the halfling way. To live not in grandeur, but in continuity. To measure greatness not by banners or battle, but by how many neighbors know the shape of your knock. To shape the world, not with force, but with rhythm. With the daily grace of tending, folding, kneading, listening. And so the story folds inward, like a well-worn quilt. The gardens bloom. The hearths glow. The songs, old and crooked with time, continue their gentle path down the hill, across fields of time and stone, into the dreams of those who listen. You are part of that story now. Not just a visitor, a bearer of memory, a keeper of soft things. Perhaps one day you will sit in a round-walled home, brushing dust from a windowsill, and recall this quiet. Perhaps you will hum a tune you do not remember learning, or reach for a spoon and feel, for the briefest moment, the warmth of hands long past. This is how the halflings remain, not by might, but by meaning, by laughter shared, by sorrow honored, by comfort given freely, and by stories, always, whispered like lullabies in the dark. So rest now. Let the candle burn low. Let the hills fold around you like blankets drawn against the night. The journey is never truly done. But for now, in this breath, in this warmth, in this hush, you are home. Thank you for listening to this halfling dream. May your sleep be deep, your thoughts gentle, and your path ever lined with soft light and sweet bread.